Hello, welcome back. It began as a faint murmur, whispers exchanged quietly between members of the church, but soon those murmurs grew into something larger. People started questioning whether Gabriel Swaggart's rise in ministry was truly a reflection of God's calling or whether it was simply the benefit of carrying his family's well-known name. Pastors from smaller congregations, who had labored for years to build their ministries, couldn't help but feel that Gabriel had been given opportunities they never had. On social media, the criticism was even harsher. Comments under his sermons often claimed that if his last name weren't Swaggart, no one would pay him any attention. At first, these voices seemed like background noise, but over time they became impossible to ignore. Gabriel noticed the shift. Every step into the pulpit felt heavier, not because of the message, but because of the eyes watching him, dissecting his every word. Preaching, once a moment of freedom and joy, began to feel like walking into a courtroom where every sentence was weighed and judged. Some accused him of leaning too heavily on his family's legacy, while others said his tone reflected arrogance. The more he tried to focus on his calling, the more he felt the sting of comparison. Week after week, Gabriel wrestled with this burden until one Sunday, the fire inside him could no longer be contained. Standing before his congregation, he set aside restraint and spoke from his heart. He looked across the crowd, aware of both the support and the skepticism in the room, and declared that his ministry was not about favoritism or a name, it was a calling from God. He told those listening that their jealousy was not directed at him personally but at what God had placed on his life. The sanctuary froze for a moment before erupting in applause from many who felt his words were powerful and liberating. Yet, others sat quietly, unsettled by what sounded to them more like pride than conviction. Conversations spilled into the hallways afterward, some praising his courage, others fearing that such statements might shift the focus away from the gospel itself. His family, carrying the weight of the Swaggart legacy, responded with caution. They admired his boldness but worried about the impression his words would leave. They reminded him that confidence could easily be mistaken for arrogance, and that in the public eye, even well-intentioned remarks could spark division. Gabriel listened, torn between defending his ministry and respecting the wisdom of those closest to him outside the church walls. The impact was immediate. Clips of his bold declaration spread rapidly across social media, sparking debates far beyond his congregation. Supporters praised him for confronting envy head-on, while critics mocked him as defensive or insecure. Hashtags began to trend, memes circulated, and the moment became bigger than Gabriel ever expected. Alone in his office, watching the storm unfold, he struggled with doubt. He asked himself whether his message had been misunderstood, whether his passion had overshadowed his humility. In the stillness of the night, he prayed for clarity and wisdom, reminding himself that true callings often face resistance before they bear fruit. In the midst of the controversy, encouragement poured in. Loyal followers shared testimonies of how his sermons had touched their lives, pastors offered support, and bloggers defended him publicly. These voices reminded Gabriel why he preached in the first place, fueling his determination to stand firm. His test came when he was invited to a large Christian conference, where he addressed thousands about the uproar. With a steady voice, he explained that his words had never been meant as arrogance but as a recognition of the struggle every believer with a calling endures. Opposition and jealousy, he explained, are natural when God elevates someone to a place of influence. His openness struck a chord with many in the audience, though not all were convinced. Even after the conference, the debate surrounding Gabriel continued. Some hailed him as a courageous leader, while others insisted he had crossed a line. Within his ministry, opinions were still divided, but Gabriel came to accept that no public perception could fully define his heart. He recognized that the path of leadership would always invite scrutiny, but he resolved to continue preaching, grounded in the belief that his calling was real and worth enduring the storms that came with it.